My name is Keith Driver. I'm the CTO for Titania, a cybersecurity company based in Worcester in the Midlands. So I started out as an engineer, as a graduate engineer, working in a telecommunications and in a electronic engineering environment. I actually started working for Plessy down on the south coast as a hardware engineer, working within the motorway roadside communications division, and also working in their traffic light production and electronics. Pretty soon, I moved from there into what was then a Plessy Major Systems Limited, which was really telephones and telephone exchanges. And I spent 10 years or so working in the core network software, embedded software environment in telecommunications. Soon after that, I moved to a small company called Telesoft Technologies. Telesoft was a really interesting, and still is a really interesting company, based on developing their own hardware and software systems to solve telecommunications problems. And in and around there, security was just starting to become a major headache for network operators. It was mostly based around the security of the telephony protocols, DPNSS, DAS2, SS7, a whole raft of them. But it became obvious that security wasn't the first thought when those protocols were designed. And voice over IP was just coming into the networks as well, and was showing similar problems in terms of its deployment and its vulnerability to malevolent activity. And so security became a more important part of the deliveries. And I also was involved in a slightly different part of the security industry, which was lawful intercept, developing systems that help keep countries safe. So delivering capability to allow properly regulated and warranted lawful intercept to take place. And so my career sort of followed those paths for quite some time. I eventually left Telesoft and joined Raytheon in the UK. So Raytheon has a large cybersecurity practice here in the UK, and I held the position of CTO Cyber for Raytheon UK for a number of years. That position is very broad in nature. It covers basic software development, but also some deep cyber activity too. And from there, I moved on to Titania as CTO, a small cybersecurity company, as part of the introduction, based in the Midlands, because they have a really exciting and scalable software product that is directly applicable to core network cybersecurity. And the purpose of my joining Titania was to help the business scale, both in terms of the product offered to the market, but also the company itself to meet the need of a growing company. So my role at Titania is to help the company scale from a number of different aspects. But the first and foremost one, obviously, as a CTO, is to set the technical strategy and to govern how we build our products and make sure that they have a shape and an architecture and a capability that meets the market need. But in a small company, of course, no person does only one thing. And so I have a lot of involvement with marketing and being able to position the products in the marketplace, understanding what the commercial need is for our products. And also to help engineering scale up. It takes a structural change and a cultural change to move from a small company to one that's trying to serve much bigger markets and much bigger customers. And so some of my time is about trying to motivate and mentor the teams to cover aspects that perhaps they wouldn't have had to cover before as part of their jobs. And that's part of the growth strategy of a small company into a medium and large company. That in itself is challenging, only 3 words. So I think that you'd have to reflect that everything is changing all of the time. So it is a dynamic environment. That would definitely be one of the words. There are no easy solutions to cybersecurity. There are some simple steps that you can take that will give you great protection, but there are no easy, simple solutions that are all-encompassing. So I think it is a challenging environment, and every environment is slightly different. So challenging would be my next word. And the world never stays still. So it's always inventing something new, hence the dynamic word. But I think that it has become much more complicated. So whereas systems used to be stovepiped and you used to be able to sort of wrap your arms around them, now they are much more complicated in the way that they're constructed with microservices and software as a service and bring your own device and lots of other aspects of modern life that we all take for granted. So what was a relatively simple challenge is now a complex challenge. So 3 words are dynamic, challenging, and complex. So I think the sad part about this is that I don't think any are decreasing. So I think they're all increasing. And we hear in the news contemporaneously that ransomware seems to be the thing that people are noticing more. They're the ones that make the news because they're more visible to all of the employees of those companies or organizations. You could take the ransomware event in the Irish Health Service recently as one that's made the news and is terribly troubling. The Colonial pipeline problem was a ransomware attack. But the ones that have been most worrying for government are more the supply chain attacks, like the SolarWinds attack and the Chiesa attack, where they have delivered payloads inside networks, and to this day it's still uncertain in each organization what damage has been done or what's been taken. So I think that you can subdivide it all up into a number of different segments, if you like. There's what is the access mechanism, which of those are growing. Again, I think that there's a number of different ways in which that's been explored by lots of different organizations. No one is rising more than the others. And I think that the actual impact of once they're into the network is also different, but you'd have to say ransomware is on the rise and does seem to be providing financial dividends for those that do it. People do pay the ransoms, unfortunately. Well, I think that cybersecurity sounds terribly technically complicated, and I think that maybe that's something that folk are reticent about if they've been feeling that they're just about to start their career and they're not necessarily in technology, or they've grown up in another branch of, even in engineering, that cybersecurity can be a little bit more deep and nerdy than perhaps they would like to participate in. But overall, my message is that, like any other industry, cybersecurity is a very broad church. It needs people from all sorts of backgrounds and disciplines. And of course, there are positions for malware analysts and reverse engineering and the lateral thinkers that try to figure out what the vulnerabilities are in software or could be. But that is a very small proportion of the folk that are in cybersecurity. The vast majority are in all sorts of other engineering positions that are to do with developing software that can help in various niche cases. I mean, that's what Titania do. It's a software development house with some domain knowledge of cybersecurity and information assurance related to pen testing. But we need business analysts, we need financial accountants, we need all sorts of different backgrounds, just as any other business does. The domain knowledge will be gained just the same as if you came into any other business that has a specific set of products or services that they offer to the market, and you can be sure that you can find your place in the industry. And it's absolutely the case that the UK and worldwide, but in the UK as well, we're short of specialists that can help with this, but we're short of every kind of discipline to fulfil the roles and the capacity needed to defend the networks. A lot of the problem is that cybersecurity has been treated as a once-a-year event. You test your systems once a year, think, okay, it's not so bad. I've got a few things to fix, but I can cope with that. But as we've moved on, it's become obvious that we need to do these things continually, and that means that we need a greater capacity in terms of the cybersecurity industry in the UK, and to think about automation as well. But it's a growing industry for sure, and it doesn't look like it's going to stop anytime soon. We do need people from all sorts of backgrounds, from all sorts of different age groups, from all sorts of different industries, frankly, that bring the threat landscape to a completely different place. So being able to understand how people think, both attackers but also the users of systems, is really valuable when it comes to being able to determine how to defend them, or how to detect an incursion, or how to react in a business context to that event. In some cultures, it's very difficult to admit that you've had an incursion. In others, it's that's not the issue. The problem is, does it matter or not? I'm in a different position. So, being able to have that body of knowledge within the cybersecurity industry in the UK means that we can defend networks, people, and data much more effectively if we have a broad spectrum of opinion, of talent, of mindset within the industry. It seems obvious, but it seems like we do need to keep saying it to make sure that we get that depth of and richness of talent in the industry. So I think that's quite a difficult question because it is such a broad front. But I think that anybody who's interested in cybersecurity could easily find personalities on Twitter that regularly post about cybersecurity. Short searches will reveal quite a broad range of people that are deep technologists or industry commentators or representatives of companies and pushing their own products or their own views. And I think the best advice is just to read. Just before I came here, I was reading a list of top brands in the UK. There's quite a difference in the top brands between the general complete picture of all age groups and those under 25. And I thought that was very interesting. The main difference was in the media brands that were being identified. So in the younger generation, it's much more about the short, sharp media delivery, so TikTok and YouTube being prime examples of that, where folk are consuming their information in much shorter bursts and much more concise and focused. Whereas perhaps previously there would have been a lot more focus on longer reads and books or long articles. And I think you need to have a mix of that. So when you're trying to find your way in the industry, finding the commentators and the proponents of, or the innovators, if you like, in the industry is important because their voice is clearly leading the industry. But it's also important to understand the context of all of this, and that requires putting in a couple of hard yards and reading the longer form articles and understanding how businesses and the various more subtle points of the industry need to be taken into account to try and mix it and put some effort into reading the longer forms, because I think they are really valuable and you get much more considered responses. The presentation I gave at CRESTCon was discussing an industry movement that has been around for quite some time, but has started to reappear in a lot of the literature, and that is around zero trust and zero trust network access. So if you haven't been aware, President Biden has just issued another executive order trying to address the cybersecurity problems that are seen in the US, so SolarWinds, Chiesa, Colonial being the latest. The Zero Trust Network Architecture is mentioned by Joe Biden in that executive order as being a founding principle of network architecture that's going to help us defend the networks. And that goes back to one of the original three words, which was complex. Networks are now really complicated, and there is really no way to stop a determined actor getting access at some point, somewhere in your network. As somebody once said, and I apologize, the person who was the originator of this, but there are only two types of network owner: those that know they've been compromised and those that don't know they've been compromised. So you have to start from the principle that there has been an incursion and there will continue to be an incursion into your network. The defense now has to be about inhibiting them from doing any harm once they're in your network. And zero trust is about trying to prevent incursions in the first place, but it's also about trying to hinder traversals through networks, pivots through networks, access to the more important assets that you have within the network. And so the principles of zero trust network architecture are coming to the fore again. And again, just to reiterate, networks are now composed of an awful lot of different services. Software as a service, providing APIs and capability, microservices, perhaps within your own applications and your own data centers. You've got bring your own device, which has half of your data on it and half of the company's data on it, whereas the boundary in the network is really unclear these days, and it's much broader than it ever was, providing a bigger attack surface. So zero trust is about micro-segmenting all of those different aspects and trying to ensure that you need to reassert your authorization and your authentication to access that data. So you don't get enduring use of credentials that they get forgotten about that then allow you access somewhere. All of that's more controlled. It does mean you have to defend the actual control element more assiduously, but you can do it. The other aspect of the talk was to say that the only way to assert that your network is in a good condition is to do so regularly. And penetration tests are a tool that have been used for many years to determine if a network or a piece of equipment is configured correctly and is robust in its defenses. But it takes a person to do that. And so automation has been a key element of penetration testing scaling for some time. Freeing up the penetration testers to do more sophisticated work that only humans can do. So the talk was about the journey from the current to past state, if you like, of relying on people to do what can be automated, and then the future world where zero trust has become an endemic network architecture feature, and there are tools that are then continually reinforcing that the network architecture has been correctly deployed and hasn't been changed. So that was the talk.